The higher level that you get in Dungeons & Dragons, the more chaotic things tend to be. There's so much more to manage and keep track of. You've got spells that can reverse the effects of gravity, but now you gotta figure out how that fireball works in the area. You can bring the dead back to life like it's nothing, but most of all, fighters can swing their sword like 3 or 4 times. It's crazy, I know. Undoubtedly though, part of what makes higher level D&D so insane are the monsters that your group might actually end up encountering. There's a wide spectrum of foes ranging from the not so bad to the completely devastating and everything in between. From legendary actions and resistances to lair actions, tons of attacks, area of effect features, there's just so much that can absolutely wreck a party's day. So today, we're going to be looking at the deadliest monsters in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition from CR9 all the way through CR20. This is part 2 of my Deadliest Monsters video, so check out the part from last week if you haven't seen it already. Quick note, there is comparatively far fewer monsters to look at in this range, like it's not even close. So some might not be a surprise, but I really hope that a lot of them will. Also, I should mention the rules. These are the same ones that I had in place from part 1, so I'll just read them again. Every officially published book from 5th edition is up for grabs. This does include things like Explorer's Guide to Wildmount and Call of the Netherdeep. I haven't included any named creatures because most of them are just so disproportionately powerful compared to their CR because the team just tends to reskin them and just never actually get around to updating that CR. Also, if any stat block has been marked as legacy because it was replaced in Monsters of the Multiverse, I'm going to be using the updated stat block, not the legacy one. I'm only 125 subscribers away from hitting my February goal of 6,000 subs, so if you'd like to help support me in reaching that goal and for the countless hours it took to prepare these 2 videos, I would really appreciate it. Also, a massive shout out to all my members: Julian, my first and newest member in the Champion tier, Jackal3 and Jumpy Sonic Bear in the Hero tier, and Julio, Siren XY, and Brain Laborks in the Warrior tier. I really couldn't do this without you guys, and it's been crazy watching this list grow every week, so really, thank you. If you'd like to help support me for as little as $1 per month, click the join button and see all the cool perks that you can get, including early access to new videos. Thanks. Starting at CR9, the deadliest creature has got to be the young silver dragon. With a solid AC of 18 and 168 hit points, 80-foot fly speed, and immunity to cold damage, this thing is definitely a beast. However, the really devastating thing here is its paralyzing breath, which subjects creatures in a 30-foot cone to a fairly high DC 17 Constitution saving throw, failing which they are stunned for 1 minute. I've talked about this before, but this is such a rough condition to get hit with, especially considering that it could potentially hit all or most of your party with it. Combine that with some melee attacks on a follow-up turn, which are all guaranteed critical hits if made within 5 feet of the target, and you've got some real problems on your hands. Even if you don't though, that breath weapon regenerates 33% of the time and can also be used to deal a savage 54 average cold damage, also in a 30-foot cone. Now, silver dragons are typically lawful good, so I don't really know what you did to end up fighting it, but it was probably a big mistake. Runner-up for CR9 goes to the Frost Giant Zombie from Explorer's Guide to Wildmount. It has much lower defensive stats than the Silver Dragon, but when combined with its Numbing Aura, which on a failed save, forces a creature to not be able to make more than 1 attack or use a bonus action, it can extend those hit points a lot farther than you might expect. Obviously, this is much more punishing to melee characters, but its freezing stare ability can also deal a hefty amount of cold damage to some backline spellcasters, but it can also paralyze them until the end of their next turn, effectively taking them out of combat for a round, or to be made easier targets for some other smaller minions that might be in the encounter. When this thing does hit though, with a solid +10 modifier and an average damage of 50, it is no slouch in that department either, and also has a ranged option for its attacks. When it comes to CR10, there wasn't really much of a choice. The standout, deadliest CR10 creature is unquestionably the Elder Oblex from Monsters of the Multiverse. You might look at its 16 AC and 115 hit points and think that it doesn't really stand a chance in a fight, but that's until you look at its available actions. The Elder Oblex can make 2 pseudopod attacks each round, and it does so at +7, which isn't the best for this tier admittedly, but when they do hit, they are combining for an average damage of 62 split between bludgeoning and psychic. That's 12 more than the Frost Giant Zombie that we just mentioned. But on top of that, in addition to the 2 pseudopod attacks that it can make, it can also use its Eat Memories feature every single round. Yes, I can't stress this enough. That is 2 attacks plus Eat Memories every round. Eat Memories forces the target to make a DC 18 Wisdom saving throw, failing which it takes 8d10 psychic damage and has its memory drained. While a target's memory is drained, when it makes an ability check or attack roll, it also has to roll a d4 and subtract that from the total. This is already really good, but that effect stacks. This is what you need to be on the lookout for when you're running this creature. So the next time Eat Memories is used against that creature, it subtracts a d6, and then a d8, all the way up to a d20, at which point the creature falls unconscious for an hour, and then the effect ends. This is really strong. If you can get this off during a couple of rounds, that 16 AC might as well be 25. Oh yeah, and this doesn't even consider their spell list, which includes Charm Person, Dimension Door, Dominate Person, Hypnotic Pattern, and Telekinesis. Comboing something like Hypnotic Pattern into Eat Memories can be absolutely devastating. Runner-up for CR10 is the Aboleth, which is a creature that I love and I really wanted to make it the winner, but it really just doesn't stand up to the Elder Oblex. That's not to say that it's weak though, it really isn't. Between its Mucus Cloud, its Tentacle attack that can disease the target, causing it to slowly take damage over time, unless cured by a heal spell, or something else of 6th level or higher, and its Enslave ability, the Aboleth just has so many ways to kill a party that they might not even be immediately aware of until it's much later, at which point it's much scarier. When it comes to CR11, the winner absolutely has to be the Shatterkai Soulmonger from Monsters of the Multiverse. Fun fact, I actually included these in an encounter for my 19th level party, and this was the thing that threatened them the most, despite not even being the highest CR creature present. Defensively, its AC and hit points aren't all that spectacular, but it does have outright immunity to both necrotic and poison damage, which should not be underrated, and it has magical resistance, giving it advantage on all saving throws against spells and other magical effects. Offensively, it can make 2 Shadow Dagger attacks, which can be made at both melee or at range, with the attacks doing a combined average 64 damage, which is quite strong on its own. But importantly, the Shadow Dagger on a hit gives the target disadvantage on all saving throws until the end of the Soulmonger's next turn, which means that following this up with its 50% recharge, I cannot emphasize that enough, this 50% recharge Wave of Weariness ability, which subjects creatures in a 60-foot cube to a DC 16 Constitution saving throw, failing which they suffer both 45 psychic damage and immediately take 1 level of exhaustion. I'm not sure it's possible to overstate just how devastating that can be, especially if the save is being made at disadvantage. Oh, and if it also needs to get away, its Weight of Ages ability slows the movement speed of nearby creatures too. This guy can easily kill a party member or two. Runner-up for CR11 goes to the Dracohydra from Fizban's Treasury of Dragons. This guy just takes everything about the regular Hydra and turns it up a notch. 17 AC, 218 hit points, plus 5 to both strength and constitution, hitting at a plus 9 with all of its attacks, with them all also being elemental damage, and with a powerful 50% recharge breath weapon, the Dracohydra is quite a beast. All the same crazy action economy of the regular Hydra is also still here. It makes as many attacks as it has heads, has as many reactions as it has heads as well. Definitely do not sleep on this thing. Second runner-up goes to the Bahir from the Monster Manual. It's got about 50 fewer hit points than the Dracohydra and only makes 2 attacks per turn, but those attacks hit really hard. Comboing that with a brutal Swallow ability and a devastating Lightning Breath, the Bahir can definitely ruin your day. The winner for challenge rating 12, honestly, isn't even close. The Aeorian Nullifier from Explorer's Guide to Wildmount is just an absolute monster here. It's got an AC of 17, 180 hit points, solid modifiers all around aside from intelligence, outright immunity to necrotic and radiant damage, and resistance against all spells. This thing can really be a problem for your group. Its horrid gnashing feature is also just ruthless. Each creature starting their turn within 20 feet of the nullifier needs to make a DC 16 wisdom saving throw, failing which they roll a d8 to decide what happens, but spoiler, none of the options are good. From 1 to 4, the target is stunned until the end of the turn. 5 or 6, they are frightened and need to use all of their movement running as far as possible from the nullifier. On a 7 or 8, the target doesn't move, but uses its action to attack one creature other than itself that's within reach, but if nothing's in reach, well, then it just does nothing. When it does attack though, it hits at a plus 8, which is the same as the Quickling though, just for context, yeah, that little CR1 guy. But anyway, this deals an average damage of 72 across 3 hits. Now, all this might sound a bit disproportionately hard on some of the martial classes, but that's before you realize that the Nullifier has Counterspell available at will. And the wildest thing is that since it's a reaction and not technically actually using the spell, there is no perceptible cast, which means that you can't counter the Aeorian Nullifier's counterspell. And while the default option for the reaction is to be effectively cast at 3rd level, it still allows you to upcast it using the same rules as the spell. I don't even know what to say. This creature is just ridiculous. It's crazy to see this as the runner-up, but the runner-up for CR12 is the Duergar Despot from Monsters of the Multiverse. With a hefty AC of 21, but only 119 hit points, it is still a foe to be reckoned with. It's got magic resistance, it's got a death explosion that also triggers damage when it suffers a critical hit, but really what you have to worry about here are its attacks. The Duergar Despot can make up to 4 attacks in a single turn, with 2 Iron Fist attacks and 2 Stomping Foot attacks, but these combine just so well together, it's disgusting. Iron Fist deals an average of 23 damage per hit, and can push a target up to 30 feet away and knock them prone on a failed DC 17 strength saving throw. It then also has the ability to move up to its speed without provoking opportunity attacks and then continue attacking. So you smash your target twice for 46 average damage, and then you knock them prone, walk over and make your 2 Stomping Foot attacks, which are now at advantage provided the creature failed that strength save, now dealing an average damage of 42 across both hits, assuming no critical hits. Without even a single crit, it deals an average damage of 88 in 1 turn, and it isn't even hard for it to be making 3 of those attacks at advantage. This thing is an absolute monster. Plus, just for fun, it can also swap an attack with a 100-foot flame jet. Honorable mention here goes to the Oinoloth from Monsters of the Multiverse, mostly for its corrupted healing feature, which actually has the target regain all of its hit points, cures it of various status conditions, but then reduces its hit point maximum by 2d6 and has it immediately suffer 1 level of exhaustion. But the extra devious thing here is that the only way to cure that hit point reduction is by casting Wish, or by casting Greater Restoration on the target 3 times within the same hour. Like, who's gonna try that? I guess now it's time for your party to hit up the library and start doing some research. Second honorable mention goes to the Septon Modron from Planescape Adventures in the Multiverse, because, as written at least, its Lightning Network feature, if it works, is a guaranteed stun for a full minute, which can just let this thing absolutely go to town on your party. Yes, this is probably a situation where the specific Beats General rule would come into effect, but if you don't know that or decide that it doesn't, well, there's literally no way to break that stun outside of Power Word Heal, assuming you've got a bard with access to 9th level spells and they manage to not get stunned. CR13 might feel like an obvious choice, and honestly, it is. It's the Beholder from the Monster Manual. The reason this is an obvious choice though is because it's just such a good choice. It's got a solid AC, sturdy hit points, a massive anti-magic field, 10 different eye rays that can be shot 3 times per turn each, with potentially devastating effects, plus an additional 3 eye rays as a legendary action. Beholders are definitely not something to be taken lightly, especially when you combine them with the hordes of minions that they will surely have given their proclivity for paranoia. The runner-up for CR13 I was kind of hesitant to actually put here, but I felt like I had to because it is actually incredibly powerful, but also an example of what I think to be pretty poor monster design. It really wouldn't be very hard for a DM to cheese this into a TPK if they're so inclined, so that's why it's here on the list. I'm talking about the Atropal from Tomb of Annihilation. When you look at this thing with its 7 AC, you have to assume that it has some crazy tricks, and believe me, it absolutely does. Firstly, it has a 50-foot fly speed. That's important, I promise. Secondly, it can make a life drain attack from a range of 120 feet, dealing 88 necrotic damage on a failed DC 19 Constitution saving throw. That's really high. Bear in mind that the Beholder, also CR13, had its saving throws at DC 16. Anyway, it can also heal itself for half the amount of damage that its life drain attack dealt. Oh, and it can summon Wraiths just for fun. But all of these are just stalling tactics for the real show, which is its legendary action, Whale, which does, thankfully at least, cost all 3 actions per round. Whale can affect any creatures within 120 feet of it, subjecting them to a DC 19 Constitution saving throw, failing which they suffer 1 level of exhaustion. Remember now, this thing can fly, so all it has to do now is fly 120 feet in the air, out of range of a lot of attacks and spells, heal itself with life drain, let the Wraiths attack the party, and then just get 6 of these whales off, which, remember, is not on a recharge, it's just a legendary action. so it can do it every single round, and it targets a really high save. With each whale, this thing gets worse and worse for the party, potentially even making the save more difficult until after 6, the party's just dead. Is this extremely cheesy? Yes, absolutely. But the Atropal also has an intelligence score of 25 and a wisdom score of 19, so I don't think it would be even unreasonable for it to decide to do something like this. Anyway, this thing is gross and I hate it. Honorable mention goes to the adult Topaz Dragon from Fizban's Treasury of Dragons for just having solid defensive stats, including great saving throw modifiers. A powerful desiccating breath weapon attack, which can weaken strength-based attacks, and a ruthless legendary action, Essential Reduction, which can reduce a creature to ash if it brings them down to 0 hit points. CR14 goes to the Death Tyrant from the Monster Manual for basically all the same reasons that the Beholder took CR13. This is essentially the same creature, but just a bit more brutal in every way. Higher AC, more hit points, better saving throw modifiers, and a better save DC on the eye rays. The negative energy cone preventing healing, and the same amount of action economy, the Death Tyrant is just a little bit tougher in almost every scenario. As powerful as the anti-magic field from the Beholder was, it also does work against itself, which shouldn't be discounted in a lot of scenarios. The negative energy cone preventing healing can potentially be even more lethal in many circumstances. Runner-up for CR14 is another kinda cheesy one in the Cadaver Collector from Monsters of the Multiverse. I will say though that the Cadaver Collector is reasonably strong though in its own right. AC of 17, 189 hit points, tons of outright damage immunities, resistance against spells, and a straight up savage paralyzing breath ability. None of that though is what makes this thing actually so deadly. Its Summon Specters bonus action is really where the magic happens. Summon Specters allows the Cadaver Collector to summon 1d4 Specters to fight alongside it. This actually used to be 1d6 in the version from Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes. The thing is though, and what you really need to remember, is that these Specters don't disappear when the feature resets after a short or long rest. No. They specifically fight until they're destroyed, or disappear when the Cadaver Collector has been destroyed. So really, depending on how long the Cadaver Collector has been out there killing things, doing its thing, there's really not anything to stop it from having it collected hundreds and hundreds of specters to its side. Now, you probably don't have a very nice DM if they do that, unless they know that you have ways of dealing with hordes and hordes of enemies, in which case it could actually be pretty cool though. CR15 was also a pretty boring one in my opinion, kinda like CR7. I gave the winner to the adult Sapphire Dragon from Fizban's Treasury of Dragons. This is here for much the same reason that the Wormling variant of it appeared as the winner for CR3. It's got great defensive stats, amazing saving throw bonuses, legendary resistance, and actions, including a powerful telekinetic fling. Again though, the real power here comes from its debilitating breath, which is on a recharge 33% of the time, dealing 8d10 thunder damage on a failed save to all creatures in a 60-foot cone and incapacitating them for a full round. Again, giving a player nothing to do for a full round can be, well, debilitating. Runner-up goes to the Typhon from Mythic Odysseys of Theros. It has reasonable defensive stats, a regeneration trait, and 3 attacks that collectively deal just under 100 average damage in a single round, striking at plus 12 to hit. Kinda like the Black Dragon though, it's not really flashy, it's just dangerous. For CR16, the winner was hands down the Marilith Summoner variant from the Monster Manual. 18 AC, 189 hit points, great saving throw bonuses, resistance to cold, fire, lightning, bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage from non-magical attacks, and outright immunity to poison, also with magic resistance, magical weapons, and oh yeah, the ability to take a reaction on every single turn in combat. It's probably worth mentioning here that it also has the parry reaction, which allows it to add 5 to its AC on an attack that would hit it, effectively giving this thing an AC of 23, obviously excluding extra attacks. Beyond all that though, it can make 7 attacks totaling just under 100 average damage, and has a 50% chance of summoning demons, including another Marilith. This thing will absolutely destroy a mid-level party. Runner-up goes to the Steel Predator from Monsters of the Multiverse. While this thing doesn't hit particularly hard, having an average damage output of around 50 per turn, it's just so hard to kill with its crazy high AC, hit points, endless resistances and immunities, and magic resistance. This thing is a tank. What really makes it powerful though is its stunning roar, which can stun creatures in a 60-foot cone, as well as deal 6d10 thunder damage to them. CR17 was by far the most insane block of creatures so far. A lot of the last few challenge ratings have felt kinda samey with not a lot to differentiate them aside from the outliers, but CR17 was wild. I had so many that I wanted to pick, it was really difficult to actually narrow this down. It's incredibly close, but I think I have to give the winner to CR17 to the Hierophant Medusa from the Book of Many Things. Sure, it's got good stats, whatever, those don't matter. It has 4 legendary resistances, that doesn't matter either. It can instantly petrify creatures in a 30-foot cone on a quite high DC 18 Constitution save, provided the creature is failing by 5 or more, but that still doesn't matter. What does matter are its actions, and in particular, its Final Blade attack. Firstly, it can do this on every turn along with 2 other attacks, so that's pretty good. It can also do it once per round as a legendary action. Final Blade is basically the Vorpal Sword effect. If the Medusa rolls a natural 20 for its attack roll, the creature has their head cut off and dies instantly if it fails a ridiculously high DC 20 Constitution saving throw. And sure, that might seem like a low chance, but it has so many ways to roll this attack with advantage. Its Constrict attack, which it can make every turn before using Final Blade, has the potential to restrain a target, granting the Medusa advantage on its Final Blade to the restrained creature. Any targets restrained by the Petrifying Gaze, also at advantage. Any creature hit by its Wrathful Smite attack becomes blinded, also granting advantage. And for some reason, the legendary action to use Final Blade just straight up grants advantage for reasons. The Hierophant Medusa is a party-killing machine. I don't know what would actually scare me more, running one of these or having to fight it. The incredibly close runner-up has got to be the Barnoloth from Planescape Adventures in the Multiverse. From way too many hit points and legendary resistances to having magical resistance on top of tons of regular resistances, this thing already looks so daunting. The really insane thing about the Barnoloth though is its 33% recharge ability, Miasma of Discord. This subjects creatures in a 20-foot sphere within 120 feet of the creature to a DC 19 Wisdom saving throw, failing which they take 6d10 psychic damage and view their allies as foes while they are now under the effect of the charmed condition. By the time you're fighting one of these, you're probably going to be pretty strong, which means you can definitely dole out some hurt on your party, all the while the Barnoloth can just be trying to summon another Barnoloth to keep chaining this effect. Oh, and it can also take up to 3 reactions per round, but only 1 on a given turn. Whew. And on that one, it can force the target to re-roll an attack roll or saving throw and use the lower result, hopefully forcing a failure on its Miasma of Discord, just to let the party go ahead and kill each other. Yeah, the charm condition ends once a creature takes some damage, but still, this is just brutal. Second runner-up goes to the Frostworm from Explorer's Guide to Wildmount. You can read the rest of the stat block, I'm just gonna cut to the insane chase here with this one. Trill, followed by Bite, which it can absolutely do. Trill subjects all creatures within 60 feet of the Frostworm to a ridiculous DC 20 Wisdom saving throw, or they become stunned for 1 minute. Following that, you just bite and swallow the creature, and they're just stuck there taking acid and cold damage on every single round, while needing to succeed on that same ridiculous save to be able to do anything. Even if they did save and managed to deal 30 damage to the worm from the inside, the Frostworm just needs to succeed on DC 20 con save to keep the creature swallowed, but it's got a plus 12 to its con save. This thing is crazy. Third runner-up goes to the Ghost Dragon from Fizban's Treasury of Dragons. Yes, this thing has a measly 10 AC, but it more than makes up for that with its 324 hit points, resistance to all forms of bludgeoning, slashing, and piercing damage, not just non-magical, immunity to acid, cold, necrotic, and poison damage, and basically every condition under the sun. Its attacks are fine, but they become just offensive after a successful Terrifying Breath, which is thankfully on a recharge of 6, but still. Anyway, its Terrifying Breath subjects creatures in a 90-foot cone to a DC 21 Constitution saving throw, failing which they take 9d8 cold damage and are frightened. However, while frightened in this way, they also have the Paralyzed condition. Sure, they can repeat the save at the end of each turn, but good luck. Now, once the Ghost Dragon's got a small country more or less paralyzed, every melee attack within 5 feet is an automatic critical hit, which means that those not so super menacing Bite is now dealing 12d8 plus 5 cold damage, and those 2 claw attacks are now dealing 8d8 plus 10 necrotic damage. So sure, it's got 10 AC, but good luck actually hitting this thing. Alright, that was a lot. Moving on to CR18, the winner is the Amnesu Summoner variant from Monsters of the Multiverse. There's not really all that much to say, this thing is just nuts. It's got great defensive stats and abilities, and its forgetfulness feature is just brutal. Creatures within 60 feet of it who fail a DC 18 intelligence save are stunned and take 4d10 psychic damage. There's very few creatures that are going to be able to pull that save off. I'm not saying it's not going to happen, but it's probably not going to happen. Once everyone is stunned, it's really not that much work for it to just keep hitting everything with its Blinding Rot or Taskmaster Whip, or hey, maybe some of the Barb Devils it can summon are looking for a little bit of lunch too. And in case all that just wasn't enough, it can also cast Feeble Mind, effectively guaranteeing at least one permanent stun. And if something somehow doesn't get stunned, it can also just use its Instinctive Charm to force a creature attacking it to hit an ally instead. I hope it's pretty clear by this point that the stun condition can be pretty devastating. Check out my video on all that if you haven't seen it yet though. Runner-up is the Fire Giant Forge Caller from Bigby Presents Glory of the Giants. This thing is really just a beast. An AC of 18, which is effectively 20 all the time though through the use of its Furnace Armor bonus action. Savage attacks that hit at plus 13 and effectively subject a creature to the effect of a more powerful Heat Metal spell, and its Magma Wave ability, which is basically a fireball that can also restrain a target. Like I said, this thing is a beast. For CR19, the winner is unquestionably the Balor Summoner variant from the Monster Manual. A hefty 19 AC, 262 average hit points, plenty of resistances and immunities, and a ridiculous on-death explosion that deals 20 d6 fire damage on a failed DC 20 dexterity saving throw. So even if you do kill this thing, it'll probably take at least someone with it. Before it dies though, it's got a fire aura dealing fire damage to just anyone near it, and it's also got magical resistance and magical weapons. It hits like a truck with plus 14 to hit and rolls 3 dice on a critical hit instead of 2. And it's got a 50% chance of summoning other demons, including 1d2 Meriliths, which you might remember as the deadliest CR16 creature on this list. Have fun with this one. Runner-up is the Cloud Giant Destiny Gambler from Bigby Presents Glory of the Giants. It's only got 15 AC, but a solid 357 hit points. Its power really comes in its attacks though. It's the first creature on this list to actually be able to average over 100 points of damage during a single turn, and doing it at plus 14 to hit, so it's probably gonna be hitting. Coupling that with its Thunderous Clap, which on top of dealing 8d12 thunder damage on a failed save, can also knock a creature prone, making for some character-ending critical hits. Finally, arriving at CR20, the deadliest creature is the Storm Giant Tempest Caller from Bigby Presents Glory of the Giants. With a sturdy 17 AC, 310 hit points, and a fly and swim speed, resistance to cold, and immunity to thunder and lightning damage, this guy is just a tank with legs. It's also got advantage on initiative, so be prepared, since not only can this well exceed 100 average damage in a single turn, its average turn output is 117 lightning damage through its lightning lance, and just a heads up, that's at up to 500 feet away and at plus 13 to hit. You're not getting away alive from this guy. And finally, the runner-up is the Ancient Brass Dragon from the Monster Manual. This guy is no slouch either though, with an AC of 20 and 297 hit points. Though funnily enough, it has less fly speed than the Storm Giant Tempest Caller, and this thing has wings. It also has less than half of the average turn damage as compared to the Tempest Caller, but that's not to say that this thing can't kill a party. Combining its Sleep Breath, knocking a party unconscious, followed up by its Fire Breath, which is an automatic failed save for unconscious creatures, this thing can surely end an adventuring career or two. So that's it, those are the deadliest creatures in all of Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition up to CR20, at least according to me. Let me know what I got wrong or what you think could have been added to the list in the comments below. I got some great suggestions in the comments from the last video for some other videos that I can do all about these monsters, so stay tuned for some of those. This really did take an insane amount of time to prepare, so if you'd like to drop a sub to support me, I would really appreciate it. Check out some of my other D&D videos, get on my Discord server, but otherwise, take care.